Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're in for a fun time. Let me tell you what we're about to do. We're going to take a quick trip out to Paradise and check in with Nosara Paradise Rentals over in Costa Rica. Then we're going to come back and start a trip around the state of Florida. And here's our goal. We want to know where every fish on the state of Florida is and where he's moving to. We'll check in with the 11 preeminent experts around the state and find out what this weekend was like in their area. My goodness, thankfully it was a calm little stretch that we had over the weekend in Northeast Florida. Sounded like it was calm almost all around Florida. Didn't take it long for it to come back up, though, so we got more fronts to deal with. We'll take them as they come. Our Action Spotter this week is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Okay, let's get this show started in my favorite fashion tonight. We will take a quick trip out to Paradise. We're on a fast jet. We're going to pull up to Nosara, Costa Rica, and check with our buddy Craig Sutton. Craig, how we doing?
I'm good, Captain Ricky. Real good.
Good. What's the latest on the airports from out there? Are they all open and 100% functioning now, or what are they doing?
Oh, yeah. There's no pre-COVID test anymore. You got to do a little survey before you get on the plane. You get a QR symbol for the survey, and that's pretty much it.
Good.
I mean, there's no other restrictions now. And the way they've got the system, they're shooting your temperature coming into the airports and coming into Costa Rican airports
right.
too. So it's almost, I think, impossible for you to get sick in an airport or on an airplane now. But I mean, I don't see how you would, but I guess, you could probably get sick anywhere really, but there's no restrictions whatsoever. We're fishing just about every day and got a bunch of people down there fishing. But the yellowfin this last week, and they're already starting to slow up on the bigger ones.
Uh-huh.
Now we got a bunch of them in the 25, 30 pound range, but those 150 plus pounders and those 100 pounders are not as prevalent as they were 2 weeks ago, which is normal. Once the rain stopped, the bigger tuna seem to slow up a little bit. Now we are catching some nice Dorado to replace them and a lot of sailfish. The sailfish are good. I mean, if you focus on just the sailfish, you can do double digits. I mean, they're biting harder in the morning, but they're definitely there and they're fired up.
Oh, that's cool. That's way cool. How are the bookings coming in?
Steady, not as good as I'd like, but I don't think I've ever been satisfied with that. Over 20 years of doing it, but they're coming in. We've got more openings December, January, February, March than we normally would this time of year. But we're thankful for what we got, and everybody we've got down there is having fun and catching lots of fish. No,
I don't doubt that a bit. I tell you what, I'm counting the days till I'm headed back down there. You're gonna have my bed all made, right?
Oh yeah. We're gonna put you and Debbie in that new Casabianca house.
I like that. All right, Craig. Thank you so much for the report. We look forward to talking with you next week, if that's okay. I tell you what, that was a quick trip to get warm over in Costa Rica. Now we're gonna come back to chilly Northeast Florida. Captain David Voorhees, are you thawed out yet?
Just barely, but I tell you, Rick, it's going to get colder these next 2 days. I see the water temperature dropping. The trout were really biting good today, although it was hard to get a keeper. A lot of those 14.5-inch trout, they're just all over the place. But it was a good trout bite. We had some good reds in the morning, but with this water temperature dropping, I only think the trout bite's going to get better. Sheephead are really doing good up here. They've really been crushing the sheephead up here. So most of the guys that's been going out after sheepheads actually been getting them around the rocks near White Shell up around here, and down in St. Augustine around the jetties and places like that. But for the sheephead, you got to find those rocks. It seems like they love those rocks. So find a rocky outcrop or something like that near deep water, And yes, there's some bigger sheephead in right now. The bigger females have shown up. Fiddler crab seems to be the beta choice up here in Northeast Florida. Although I've caught them on everything. I've even caught them on mud minnows before. I've even caught them on shrimp and stuff like that. But the real serious sheephead fishermen tend to go with the fiddler crabs.
David, I think the number one, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but I think the number one mistake that so many beginning sheepshead fishermen make is maybe they concentrate on those big jetties too hard. Those jetties get pounded a lot. And I think those fish are downtown. I think they're any place where there's a lot of rock. You find a good rocky place that doesn't get hit all the time, and you're probably going to be ahead of the game instead of fishing the tips of the jetties along with 87 other boats. And
plus, being able to pick the right day, the right weather to get out. You got to remember that.
That's
this
right.
Time of year, we don't always get those Chamber of Commerce days in Northeast Florida. Yeah, we get the winds blowing up here, guys. Yeah, we get temperatures in the 30s up here. So, you got to pick your days to do the jetties. You're not going to go out there on a real windy day. But from what I understand, some of the bigger fish that I have seen, the guys do really good in the St. Johns River around some of these deep holes. And I've caught them, Rick, just doing my deep water jigging, and I'm not even trying to catch sheephead. Right. But I do find them in those deep, deep holes.
Hey, David, I've got a question I need to ask you.
All righty.
All right. My wife loves her fireplace, her propane fireplace, right?
Right.
So I fished yesterday, and we curled up there Saturday night, and she said, honey, there's plenty of gas for me for in the morning, isn't there? And I said, sure. Yeah, there's plenty. Well, about 8 o'clock yesterday morning, she got up, started her fireplace, and it went poof. How you think that worked out for me last night?
I think you maybe been sleeping on the couch.
I wasn't sleeping nothing.
It got a little bit colder. It got a little colder, didn't it?
Ooh, buddy. If I was sleeping next to anything warm last night, it was my big black dog. I promise you that.
Hey, I always tell these young guys that are getting married, make sure you get a very comfortable couch and a big old dog that'll always be your friend.
Always. My dog always is glad to see me. There ain't no doubt. Cap, we appreciate it so much. I'm going to give you some offshore. Is that all the inshore news you got? I'm going to give you some offshore news.
That's pretty much it. We're catching redfish here and there in the deep waters. I think the good red fishing right now is if you can find a deep hole back in a creek, and I mean around 10 feet deep, on some of these bends at these low, extremely, extremely low tides we've been getting lately, you're going to do pretty good on the redfish. You got to pick through the little ones, though. I see so many times, Rick, where these guys sit on these holes and they start catching these little rat reds one after the next, and after about 7 or 8, or they said, "Let's go. There's nothing but little redfish here." Not always. That's not always the case. I found this past 2 weeks, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to pound these little redfish until all of a sudden there's a big boy in there and he's going to come along. And it happened to us twice today. You got to get a lot of shrimp. You got to fish with a lot of live bait. But there's some big ones mixed in with those little ones. You just stick with it, and sooner or later a big boy's going to come along and get on your hook.
David, is there a bait that you can go to, maybe a cut mullet, maybe a half a crab or something that you can weed out those smaller fish with?
Rick, I've talked to several captains this week, and we've all on the same agreement. We don't know what it is, but if you're not fishing with shrimp right now in Northeast Florida, you're going to be struggling. Everything wants shrimp right now.
Gotcha.
I think there's still a bunch of shrimp in the intercoastal in the river. I don't know what it is, but today, this is no lie, we were on a ribbon fish hatch you wouldn't believe. So what's my go-to bait? I'm going to throw the silver paddletail grub. That looks just like a ribbon fish. Threw it out there, we didn't catch a thing. The minute we put a shrimp out there, bang, 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 we caught the trout.
How about that? That's fascinating. Well, let me tell you about offshore. It's a little different. Something's happened. It's slowed down dramatically. The El Pescado tournament was this week, and the four reel won it with 7 sailfish in 2 days. That's not real good. Those guys are top shelf sailfish fishermen. If they're catching 7, I need to stay at the dock. And I didn't hear good reports on the troll from over the weekend. The highlights seem to be the cobia. Cobia are on the wrecks in 100 to 120 feet of water, and they're doing very well with them. But the bottom fishing in around 120 feet, I was with Dave Crisp and Steve Proctor yesterday, was not good. We finally found good bottom fish, but we had to go to 160 feet to find them. So something's up with that 21 fathom water. Now, there seems to be fish on the surface, just not on the bottom. Yesterday, the Jody Lynn 2 had a sailfish and a couple of mahi just drifting their flat line while they were bottom fishing. But the bottom fishing here again in 120 feet was not nearly as good as we expected. So we got to let a thermocline or whatever it is in the 21 bottom play its way out of here, because it's time for us to enjoy some outstanding bottom fishing, and I'm hoping it's right around the corner.
Well, that sounds good, Rick. That sounds real good.
All right. Thank you, David. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
You got it. Thank you, Cap. We appreciate it. Our thanks to Captain David Voorhees for a great but chilly Northeast Florida report. Now let's move down to East Central. I'm kind of wondering what's on Jim Ross's Christmas list. Jim, if you could buy one thing for get one thing for Christmas to improve your fishing, what would it be?
Oh, you got me on the spot here. One thing that would improve my fishing. I would have to say that's probably a crystal ball.
There you go. Yeah.
Geez, I don't know, Rick. It kind of caught me off guard there. I've got about everything I can possibly own for my particular style of fishing. Probably, instead of buying something for Christmas, maybe something like being able to recall all of my past experiences. That would be really cool to be able to do.
Wouldn't it?
To say, hey, in this particular scenario, this was working or that was working, or under these certain conditions, that would be pretty neat. Obviously, that's not something you can wrap up and put in a nice little box for Christmas, but that would be something that would be really cool. That would really improve your fishing.
Yeah, there's no doubt it would. I'd love to have instant recall for why that school of blackfin tuna was where it was when they were there, and how to expect them again. That's a great point. Tell me how your fishing's been this week.
It's actually been pretty good despite, some fairly challenging conditions in some places. Now, we still have, some issues going on with the lagoon system. The Banana River has not started to really die off yet, but we're expecting that to happen any day with this bloom. The Indian River bloom has spread, and it's getting. I mean, it's just not good. These algae that we have are just not doing good. They're dying off. The proteins are sloughing off from them, and it's creating low dissolved oxygen scenarios, and it's creating more fish kills this week. Unfortunately, even with the cooler, windier conditions, there's still just such an intense algae bloom that it's created more issues with fish kills and things of that nature. Now, having said that, the nearshore bite, as we've been mentioning, we've been talking about it for 2.5 to 3 months. The nearshore bite is still good, especially for the big bull redfish. Sebastian, Cape Canaveral, and Ponce Inlet. Those inlets themselves are doing really good, or just outside of those inlets. There's plenty of bulls to go around. We went, and sharks too. There's tons of different sharks out there. So there's plenty of bigger fish to pull on with some cut bait. And you can also get sheephead, flounder, whiting, pompano, ladyfish jacks, various other things that are cruising along the beaches and at the jetties and that sort of thing on your smaller jigs and shrimp and things of that nature. So there's still a good bite. It's just not in the lagoon systems right now, and probably won't be in the lagoon systems for at least another 3 or 4 weeks if things are going the way that I think they're going to go. Now, one surprise thing that did happen yesterday cobia popped up down between Sebastian and Vero Beach. Guys were sight casting cobia, or they were following sharks as well, but there was a lot of free roaming, free swimming cobia just in the near shore first couple of miles off the beach, within first 2 to 3 miles off the beach. So that was a really cool thing that had happen over the weekend that we really didn't expect, because that's more of a springtime scenario where you've got free swimming cobia up top that you can sight cast to. So to have that happen in the fall, really, really cool. Also, the wahoo bite is still fairly good for guys that are going out to the edge of the Gulf Stream and fishing the edge of the stream, those rips and eddies that are associated with the edge of the stream. That's been a pretty solid bite as well. The sailfish, not so much. Dolphin, not so much. Blackfin tuna, not so much. But the wahoo, pretty darn good. So I would say that those are the two bright spots. Inshore, you're looking at the cobia, and offshore, you're looking at wahoo, two very good eating fish. And then for just guys that like to go pull on stuff, anywhere from Sebastian to Ponce Inlet along the nearshore waters, especially if you find an area with bait, you've got those sharks and you've got those big bull redfish. Gotcha.
That's a good report, Jim. That's actually, it sounds like your blue water fishing may be better than ours. They had the El Pescado sailfish tournament up here last week, and it 2-day tournament and 7 fish won it. So that's not the kind of numbers that these guys are used to doing. There's usually more here.
No.
That's off.
That's normally what guys are releasing per hour, not per tournament.
Yeah. That sounds more like one of my catches instead of one of those guys' catches. But to me, that's a great day. To them, not so much. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But no, that's good news. Now, Jimmy, that it'll be this next cold snap. We got a cold snap coming in tonight. Just supposed to chill it down. Will that kill that bloom in the lagoon system, you think?
It's undetermined. This type of bloom, this type of algae that we're seeing, is still not classified. I mean, they're still trying to determine what it actually is, or at least the last time that I talked with somebody that knew anything about it, which was about a week ago. They still haven't determined what type of algae it is and what its preferences are. We do see that whenever there's overcast, like we've had a couple of times here recently, if you've got 24 or 48 hours of overcast, and especially some light drizzly rain conditions, the green algae that we're having bloom is not happy with those conditions. And
Good.
So that starts a die-off. The problem with the die-off is that when the algae starts to die, it starts to decay and it breaks down. The proteins come out of it, create this sudsy, almost like somebody's dumped soap in the water. There's just foam everywhere from the proteins from these things. The dissolved oxygen drops because the bacteria start to eat the algae. So it's just, it's kind of like going to, biology class, to be honest with you, trying to figure out what exactly is happening with this lagoon system and how, when these proteins and things break down out of these organisms, how it's affecting the water. But the one thing we do know, the trout and the redfish have been fairly successful at getting out of it. The catfish, the puffers, the croakers, the sheep's head, there's a few other species that have not been as successful. And I don't think at this point, we haven't really seen any snook or any tarpon. Now, tarpon could basically, live without oxygen in the water because they can gulp it.
They can live in a septic tank.
Yeah, the snook will stick their noses up and they'll actually sip air in these low oxygen conditions until the oxygen comes back up enough that they can actually breathe. But we haven't seen the game fish species dying off as much as we have those periphery species. Mm-hmm. But still, anytime that you have a die-off, something that's just not good. It's just not good.
No, certainly not.
And so we still struggle. We're still struggling down here. People, there's one thing. I had Dr. Lisa Soto. I talked with her the other day on my Saturday show, and she was saying the one thing that people can do that immediately will make an impact along the coastal communities, any coastal community, is to simply stop fertilizing their lawns. Yep. Lawn fertilizer is really not a necessary thing. And it's the one thing that you don't have to be mandated, legislated, or anything else. You don't have to wait for funding to become available to fix what's wrong. You can immediately make a change and make a difference by immediately stopping with your fertilizer of your grass. Not talking about your citrus trees, your vegetables, your ornamentals. Those things, still do. We live in Florida, obviously. They still do need a little help. But lawn fertilizer application, if it was completely eliminated in our coastal communities, it would immediately make a gigantic impact on how our lagoon systems are working. And so that's the one message that we're trying to spread is just please don't fertilize your grass. Just water it, mow it, let it go.
Excellent. Well said, Jimmy. I appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully next week I'll be able to tell you that once again we didn't have a fish kill and of any major consequence, and that the fishing is getting better in the lagoon system.
Man, I'm counting on it. I am sure counting on it. It's the last thing we need in 2020. Don't send us out with a bang. Thank you, brother.
No, please don't. Yeah. Thanks, Rick. Have a good one.
Talk to you next week.
Bye now.
Our thanks to Jim Ross for a great East Central report. Now let's move it south a little ways and talk with our man, John Earhart. John, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you, son. How is fishing in Stewart?
Well, the fishing this week's been pretty good. I'd like to talk about the nearshore fishing. I don't typically talk about that on the reports, but December, January, February, and March, we have some phenomenal nearshore fishing.
Good.
This week we're catching tons of Spanish mackerel, bluefish, and jacks. So for an angler that just wants to go out and doesn't want to commit a lot of time and effort getting out into the ocean, you can be out fishing in 5 to 10 minutes, and you can catch some decent eating table fare as well. Just south of our St. Lucie Inlet, they're catching a lot of Spanish mackerel, bluefish, some snappers, even seen a few cobias caught there this week. So if you're looking to do something and you don't want to commit to the ocean, that's a good alternative if you got the family and they're not very, very good fishermen, but they want to get out into the ocean. Moving further out, the sail fishing has been pretty darn good this week. Fishing north and south of the St. Lucie Inlet, guys are catching anywhere from 2 to 10 fish a trip on average. And there's been some nice mahi and wahoo mixed in there as well. And that's been anywhere from 90 to about 350 feet of water, just depending on the conditions day to day.
Now, let me ask you something, John. Is there any live bait available down there, or is everybody pulling ballyhoo?
Most of the guys are ballyhoo fishing. We've had a couple tournaments, and a lot of those fish were trolling dead ballyhoo with dredges. But the live bait guys have been in the pocket a few days this week, selling live large pilchards and some thread fins. It's been Brian's live bait's been the guy that's been down there in the pocket. I've been calling him ahead of time, maybe a day or two before, to see if he's going to be there or not. So there has been bait, but it's been sporadic, and you definitely want to call a day or two before and make sure that he's actually going to be there. Otherwise, have a couple dozen ballyhoo rigged up so that you control and not be disappointed when the bait guy doesn't show up.
Yeah. Now the quickie out of Finest Kind was last week, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Who won it?
The Champagne Lady, I believe, won it. They're right there in Sailfish Marina, so they were really stoked about that.
How many did they have?
To be honest, I don't know the exact number of fish they caught, but I know the sail fishing was pretty good because I've seen a lot of guys were catching, 5 to 6 fish each day. So
yeah,
I don't know what the total numbers were, but the fishing was pretty good.
Good deal.
We've also had a lot of cobia on the reef this week as well. Every trip I've been catching 4 to 6 cobia on the 6 and the 8 mile reef. So definitely have some heavier tackle available, and maybe have a cobia jig tied up on a heavy duty spinning rod.
Yeah, I tell you what, they're all the way up here in Jacksonville, out in 120 feet. I've heard good reports of them. So hopefully we're in for a good wintertime run of them, John. It's kind of looking that way. Anything going on inshore down there?
Yeah, the inshore has been pretty steady for black drum, sheep's head, some triple tail. The snook fishing's still been pretty good. I would expect after this next couple cold fronts that the snook fishing's going to slow down significantly. So definitely take advantage, get out there, maybe catch a keeper or two before the season closes here on the 15th.
It closes on December 15th, right?
That's correct.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, that's a good report. I'm glad to hear the cobia are stretched out all the way down there. I hope they're all headed my way. John, we appreciate you so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
Yep, I look forward to talking to y'all next week.
You too. Thank you, Cap. Take care.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalube marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalube full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalube marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to his name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to use second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to John Earhart for a great Southeast report. John and all of our action spotters are brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Okay, we're going to make a stop in the most famous city in Florida. That would be Miami. And find out what's going on from the mayor himself, Captain Alan Sherman.
Rick, I'm doing great.
Yep.
Getting the thermals out, though. I don't need them yet, but I will in a couple of days because we're going to go from 70 right now to upper 40s by Wednesday morning, and that's a pretty good size drop for us here down here in South Florida. Weather like this, we really haven't seen the 40s in years, so that's kind of more of a normal weather pattern. I mean, that's what I remember it being 10 years ago. It just seems like over the last 10 years, we haven't seen those cold temperatures. So we'll see if that perks up our fishing like it used to.
Alan, I left the dock yesterday with my Yamaha foul weather suit on over my hooded jacket. I had my face mask from deer camp on and a pair of gloves. Does that tell you anything?
Yes.
It was
Tells
cold.
me it's pretty darn cold.
Yeah, that's the doggone right.
Tells me it's whether you should be staying indoors.
No. I love fishing in my bib overalls. I do now. I ain't kidding you.
Right.
Tell me how the fishing is in Miami.
So we had a wonderful, just spectacular weekend this past weekend. Light winds, warm temperatures, and the fish responded really well. Not huge numbers of fish, but lots of variety. There were kingfish up to 20, 25 pounds, dolphin, sailfish, blackfin tunas, bonitas, all on the surface, all feeding anywhere from 80 feet on out to the blue water color change, which was about 300 feet. The guys did well on dolphin out 900 feet where they found some weed lines. Now, all of that's going to change and already has changed because once the west winds kicked in, which they did early today, it's going to push a lot of those fish offshore, especially the dolphin. The dolphin that were in 900 feet, they're going to be way over 1,000, if not further, and it's going to get pretty rough out there. But the inshore fish, the fish along the reef, they're going to keep on feeding. It just will get a little more uncomfortable for our fishermen, because we should have some decent winds with this front. But The bottom fishing has probably been the best thing. The guys have been doing incredibly well on bottom fish day and night. During the daytime, they're catching vermilion snappers, yellow-eyed snappers, nice muttons, like 10, 15-pounders, black groupers over 50 pounds, a lot of red groupers, big porgies, and amberjacks, big amberjacks. And most of these fish are coming off the wrecks in depths of anywhere from 100, 120 feet on out to about 260. The guys are fishing right on the bottom with live pinfish, live pilchards, threadfin herring, live ballyhoo, long leaders, and just enough weight to get you down and hold you, but not go down like a rock. Closer in at night, the yellowtail bite has just been incredible. The guys are limiting out on 1 to 4 pound yellowtails, which are pretty good sized fish down here. And those fish are biting in depths of anywhere from 50 feet to 80 feet of water, and the guys are anchoring for them. Along the beaches, we've had not a lot, but we've had Spanish mackerel, bluefish, a few pompano. The pompano really haven't showed up yet, but this big push of cold weather might get them in our area. There's been blue runners and a few other species, jack revels, and the guys are catching them off the piers and jetties. A few people, they get up early enough, they're fishing the surf and catching them. There were some really nice snook caught this past week, but those fish will probably shut off with this colder weather. Them and the tarpon that were around, they don't really care for this cold weather, and usually it'll take a couple of days of warmer weather to get them feeding again. Let's see. In the bay, it's been scattered Spanish mackerel, scattered bluefish, jack revels, blue runners, quite a few of them, undersized mutton snappers, and lots of gag groupers wherever you can find some structure.
Well, I tell you what, I am glad to hear somewhere's got plenty of gag grouper, because they've been terrible up here, Alan. They really have. But I did think of you.
Most of these are coming in shallow water, though.
Yeah, are they juveniles?
They may be going out too deep.
Are they juveniles?
They are juveniles. Yeah, there's a few legal ones, but the majority of them are under the legal limits.
Well, I hope we're getting a new crop, because we've been without up here for a long time. But I did think of you yesterday. I caught one of yours. I caught mutton yesterday. It's probably 12, 13, something like that.
Nice fish.
Yeah.
Very nice. Another fish that has been around in really large numbers, but still undersized, has been snook. There's been catches of over 100 snook in a day in South Bay and North Bay, all the way up to into Mall Lake and further. And these fish are like schooled up around the canals, and they're undersized. They're 20 inches or less, but plentiful.
Excellent.
Hopefully, again, the weather's going to probably shut them down, but once it warms up, they should fire back up again.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, it doesn't bother me when the weather shuts them down. It's natural and it occurs. I just don't want it to get so cold so fast like it did up here a few years ago and kill a bunch of them.
Well, we don't want to see that either. We had a front come through today, and it's going to be Wednesday when it gets into the upper 40s, not low 40s, upper 40s. Now in Flamingo, it will be cooler. You might see mid 40s there, and there you may see an issue with the snook having a problem. But I think these fish will be okay. I think they'll survive this one, and it just comes down to whether or not we get another cold front that's really cold in a few days. I looked at NOAA, their forecast, and for the weekend they're saying it's going to be southeast or southeast to east at 15 to 25. So by Friday you're going to start seeing things warming up quickly.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. Cap, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it, Rick.
Thanks so much, Alan. Captain Alan Sherman from down in Miami.
Stay warm.
Now, we will stay warm. All right, we're going to push it on down south a little bit further and check in with our man Nick Stancic in Alamorada, where it never gets cold.
I'm hanging in. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Now, you still warm down there, right?
Yeah, it's still pretty nice. We had that front come through, a little bit of rain and wind, but temperatures haven't really got too much, so it's not too bad.
Good deal. Tell me how your fishing's been.
And I'm just fishing a little bit right now because we got the new baby girl still, but I fished last Saturday and had Zachary, and we got him his first ever swordfish with his family. He's 12 years old, caught about 100-pounder, so we're happy with that. And then we went and did some bottom fishing, and we caught one night barrelfish and a bunch of rosies.
I'll be darned, there's nothing wrong with that trip. Now, Nick, most people have never seen a barrelfish. What does he look like? How big a fish was it?
Maybe it's probably 15 pounds. I'd say they average 10 to 20 pounds, and kind of like a brown, deep water fish with a lot of slime on it. They're super slimy, but thick white meat and good to eat. And we catch them anywhere from 700 to 1,200 feet.
Huh. Now, how about the rosies? Are they good to eat too?
They're delicious. Yeah, a big one, is about 3 pounds. They don't have huge fillets, but delicious little white fillets on them, and we love them.
Outstanding. Nick, have you heard anything from inshores? Your brother had any guide trips, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I guess we start getting this time of year, and the fishing's been changing a little bit on and off, especially with the weather. But he had a few slower days just with a few snook and reds, but then he had a few other days. Yesterday he had a permit, he had a pair of cobia, he had some big snook, he had nice redfish. His everything was on fire, so it's been a little up and down. Still decent fishing even on the slower days, but a couple of really good days mixed in. And another fish I want to tell you about, my cousin Tiffany, that's my Uncle Scott, who runs the fish with his daughter. She caught a big bull just shy of 35 pounds on a light spinner rod with 25-pound leader and a little 2-0 hook the other day. They fought over an hour. They caught that in about 200 feet of water.
Outstanding. So, oh, that's way cool.
Nice fish for her. Yeah, long fight, light leader, but it all came together. So they sent me a nice picture of that yesterday.
Nick, if I had to pick my favorite fish out of everything we catch, I got to tell you, a 30-plus pound dolphin would be high on that list somewhere.
They're exciting, no doubt about it.
They are a fantastic fish. Well, you get back to taking care of that baby girl. I hope you're not getting any sleep, and we hope to talk with you next week.
Yeah, I'm good. We'll talk to you then, Rick.
All right, thanks, Nick. Captain Nick Stancic from the Broad-Minded out of Alamorada, Florida. Listen, I had somebody call me the other day and reach out for contact information for Nick and his charter service down there. If you've got any questions for any of our action spotters, you want to know what's going on in the Panhandle in 100 feet of water, we got the person to answer it. Tyler Massey will let you know. Just reach out to us, Florida Sportsman on Facebook. Leave us your question, and we'll make sure that the action spotter in your area gets it, and we'll answer it on the air. So we look forward to hearing from all of you. We're so glad you're enjoying the podcast. Please subscribe to it and even give it to a buddy of yours that didn't catch any fish, and we'll help him too. Our thanks to Captain Nick Stancic, and he sounds a little tired. I think that baby girl is about wearing him out. Let's swing around to the 10,000 Island area and check in with our buddy Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you doing today?
Good. Doing outstanding. Tell me how your fishing's going.
It's been really good, honestly. It's we're full. I like to call. We had a little bit of a break in the action due to last week's cold front. And last couple of days or the couple of days afterwards, obviously, are going to be a little bit sluggish. Our water temperature dropped a good 7-8 degrees, but it came right back up. And I think a lot of people tend to freak out a little bit with the cold fronts. We're obviously, whole state's going to get another batch of this in the next 2 days. And, that probably is going to shut things down, the bite a little bit. But you got to be a little creative. If you still want to go out, you can brave the elements. You got, have a little bit later start, get the sun shining on you a little bit, let those waters, especially the backwaters, warm up a bit. We're a little bit more blessed in our area just because we have, tannic colored water in our backcountry. And obviously the darker colored water is going to warm up quicker. It's also going to retain more heat as well than other shallower areas. So that's a little bit advantageous for us. And you just got to be a little bit creative. The other aspect is we have, we're in our wintertime, tide. So we have some dramatic negative tides. And I'm fishing deep. That's really my kind of wintertime thing. And I'm looking for, areas, I call if you look at the 10,000 Islands, there's a bunch of different passes, if you will. They're known as passes, but they kind of serve as almost the main arteries for our area. And there's probably a good, 6 or 7 of those. And, all along those, there's always heavy current flow and, some deeper water. Undercut banks, this time of year do really well. So understanding how a river flows with bends and turns and where, the washed out undercut banks might be, is something that does extremely well for wintertime snook. You get some gag groupers in there, you get, plenty of Goliath groupers if that's your thing. But some big snook can be caught that way. And that's what I like to do on low tide is, I like to use live bait. That's what we've been kind of doing, it's probably this last week. Bait's been very, very plentiful. We're dropping live filters, kind of almost on a knocker rig if the current is strong enough. And we're just kind of really tight to the bank. Some of these areas could be 8 feet right on the bank. And, we're just, feeding, some snook, some big pilchards, and it's been working. So that's been, what I'm doing with snook. I really haven't been on any redfish, to be honest with you. It's really been a snook bite and a trout bite. The trout bite is in real close proximity to where we're doing all the snook fishing. Those deeper holes are definitely holding fish throughout these, passes and rivers, and they're stacked up. It's wintertime, simple stuff. I'm using a 3/8 ounce brown bucktail jig, about as simple as it gets. Browns and tans work really good for me. And I use a thumbnail sized piece of shrimp. And I think that's critical. A lot of people are going to want to put a large piece of shrimp or a whole shrimp on there, and it just isn't as effective. I just want that thing on there for some scent and not to deter the action. And if you put too big of a piece on or a whole shrimp, you're upon your retrieve or the fall, it's not going to act as natural. It's going to cartwheel and get all kind of tangled up. And just that tiny little piece of shrimp is all you really need to get that bite fired up. And you can usually get a couple fish out of a little thumbnail. And I just kind of pre-slice those right in the morning, throw them in a Ziploc, throw them in a cooler. And that way I've got plenty, for my customers. But on the inshore side, that's really what's going in the mix. We're starting to see some black drum too, and some big ones. Captain Rob Walzak was out within the last few days and had 4 fish over 30 pounds.
Oh my goodness!
So,
that's
there's
some good ones.
Yeah, and there's some giant ones, and they're schooling up really good. So there's some sight fishing opportunities available for that. Bigger ones are holding a little bit deep. Rob had caught one of those with its back nearly halfway out of the water, though.
That's cool.
So cool,
Steve.
Yeah,
I hope
so cool. So,
I hope most of the guys down there understand those big fish are great fish, but they're really not very good eating after they pass that 25-pound mark. So, I mean,
they don't. They get all.
Yeah,
they really don't. They get all warmed up, and it's just selective harvest. We talk about it all the time, and it's take smaller fish. If smaller size slotfish, I'd rather have a 19-inch redfish for dinner than a 27. To be honest with you, I mean it just seems to be it tastes better, and that kind of holds true with a lot of our fish. To be honest with you, so that's kind of the inshore bite. It's been doing pretty good. Nearshore bite, it's all relevant to the wind at this point. We're right in the middle of winter, or the start of winter, and we're going to start getting cold fronts with some frequency here. That's just the name of the game. And, I like to always call it, once every 10 days, we're going to be fighting something from now till March. And, the nearshore bite is still just absolutely unbelievable when you can get out there. And the big thing that's, changed for us on the nearshore bite is the cobia are here in just huge numbers. And the odd part, we're seeing them in, way south, a little bit, south of Chokoloskee area on the nearshore wrecks. And then we kind of have a void all the way through the region until we get to the top part of our region up to Naples. And all the Naples, they're in the mix on these, tons of wrecks and reefs, up to 5-6 miles out. You can get to about 10 miles, but I don't think you really need to go that far. There's big kingfish out there. There's and these are public numbers. So keep that in mind. This is not some secret spots that, captains hold, close to the chest. These fish are on public numbers that are, that do see a lot of pressure. So, be on the lookout because the cobia are just moving through the area. And it just seems like the northern part of our region, you may want to ask Greg to the north of us, Greg Stamper's region. I'm sure they're catching them up there. I know a couple captains up there that have done really well the last couple of weeks. So it's doing really good. I mean, our nearshore bite's probably never been this good. I really, guys are catching permit. I mean, everything's in the mix. It's just been unbelievable.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard to say something bad about our region right now or the quality of fishing. I mean, it's just been top notch. So
yeah, and in a strange way, I'm really kind of happy about this cold weather. It's supposed to freeze here tomorrow night, and it was the coldest night before last that it's been, they said, in 1,000 days. This feels a little more like normal, doesn't it? Feels a little bit like the way our weather's supposed to be.
Yeah, it does. And, as hot as of a summer we had, that went right even through, September and parts of October. I think it was more of a relief for a lot of us that, spent some time on the water, but it does. It feels, and it makes it a little bit, as volatile as some of these cold fronts can, make it. You can almost bank on it's coming through. I like to call it that every 10 days. I got it in the back of my head. Something's going to happen with the weather, like a dip in the weather.
Mm-hmm.
But, I can plan for that, and, slow fishing, slow down, things of that avail, let people bundle up. And, a good majority of a lot of the people we all fish throughout the state are from the north. So this seems like a spring day to a lot of people, but, us people that have been here a while think it's just drastically cold, but, it takes a long, I always try to tell people this with fronts, in the wintertime is, 1 or 2 days, if it dips in the upper 30s, that's cold. It is going to drop the water temperature, but it rebounds so quick in Florida, and maybe not as quick, maybe up in your neck of the woods, but at least down here, the state of Florida is still a tropical, area. And, once you start getting into 5-6 straight days of that, really, really cold temperatures, then it's really going to affect the bite, but 1 or 2 days, it's really not. And, the sun really warms everything back up, and in a day or two, it's kind of back to normal. But I think, I love wintertime fishing. It's one of my favorite times of year to fish. I really enjoy it.
I'm right there with you, Cap. Listen, we appreciate it so much, Steve. Please tell me we can check in with you next week, see if it's warmed up for you.
Can't wait.
All right, buddy.
Yeah.
We'll talk with you in a week. Thanks again, Steve. All right, thanks to Captain Steve Dahl for a great 10,000 Islands report where he says the cobia have moved in strong numbers. He suspects there's more of them up by Captain Greg Stamper. We'll find out. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing very good, Rick, and you are absolutely correct that cobia bite has been going pretty much nonstop now for about 3 weeks, and this week it did continue to be fantastic for those that went out there and hit these fish. And again, they're anywhere from about 2 miles all the way out to about 7 or 8, pretty regular. So if you want to do the nearshore stuff and you happen to just if you'd like to eat cobia,
I do.
Then you might be in good terms right now if you're in my neck of the woods.
I do. And I caught a mutton snapper yesterday, and I like to eat him too.
Yes, I agree. I'm with you.
What's going on over there besides cobia?
All right, so I guess we'll talk first about kind of the offshore guys because they did get out this week a couple of days. We had a few days that were very calm. We had swells, but they were nice, smooth sailing, so you could just run you were going up and down, but they were just big swells from that storm that was left over. The guys that did get out there, they were about 100 and 120 feet, did very, very well in the red grouper. There's not a problem right now limiting out on your red grouper. They caught a lot of nice gags and a ton of snappers, everything from your mangrove snappers all the way down to your lanes. So that's full speed right now. They're just in that predicament right now between all these fronts of, can we go? You can book them, but they'll take you 5 miles out and say, hey, in another 30 miles it'll be double this. So you got to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, it's all in how bad you want it, and a lot of days you've got to know when to fold them. Let's put it that way.
Definitely.
All right, anything going on inshore?
Oh man, the back bay has been fantastic. I mean, we had that pre-front bite this week with just so many redfish, and they were all upper and over slot. We had quite a few nice snook, and I'm talking about these snook are obviously in a transition period right now. They're either coming from the wrecks or the beaches, which is my guess. The beaches are probably where these fish are coming from, and they're starting to move back to their winter haunts because they feel that cool water starting to hit them. So they're going back into these creeks and these rivers that are darker, and they kind of stay warmer throughout the year. So they're moving back. But these fish are all big fish. We've seen some fish this week 34, 35, 36 inches, and it hasn't been like that for a while. So we're starting to see these fish pushing back into these rivers and these creeks, and they're definitely ready to go. Now, on top of that, today, as a matter of fact, this morning, we went back right as this front was just ending. The wind hasn't picked up yet. It's starting to, right now it's blowing crazy. But this morning it was flat calm. We ran up into some of those same areas up in our rivers to see what was going on. And we did not catch those big snook in there, but we did catch juvenile tarpon.
Really? In December? How about that?
Yeah, it was nice. It was really cool. Got to play with those guys. Saw a few rolling here and there. Hooked up to a few, got to touch a few, and the crazy thing was the snook weren't right there yet. But you know what? Maybe I just missed them by that hour or two time frame when they would have been going on fire.
Now, Greg, let me tell you about up where I live, and I want to know if you've got the same situation. We get so much of a tide change here that at low tide, a lot of our mud flats are exposed. And that's a big deal in the wintertime, because when that water comes back over that warm mud, it of course warms that water, and we will see fish in real shallow water as we get into the as we get deeper into the wintertime. Do you experience that same thing?
Yeah, actually that's a great example too, and I'm thinking yours may be similar. We always get in the wintertime, our lowest lows are always in the morning. So,
yeah, that's right.
So it gets way down there low, negative tides. Talking about the negative lows, the mean lows are negative 4, 5, 6 a foot below. That's when we get our negative lows. It's always in the morning in the wintertime. So those fish obviously aren't there at that point. And then as that tide comes in, it may not come in until 9, 10 o'clock. Those flats do warm up. And you will see those fish, once they can get enough water, 4, 5, 6 inches. If you're very lucky, you have a boat that can get there really shallow beforehand, you're going to see these fish laying up in those flats. And if you look on your depth and you see what you got as far as temperature, you're going to always realize that those areas are 2-3 degrees higher than what you were just running in.
Makes perfect sense. That'll help the guys in the wintertime. Look on those flats that have been exposed and had the sun beating on them. It'll warm that water up. Greg, we appreciate it so much as always. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
You got it, Rick. Tight lines, and if you want to catch a cobia, just let me know. We're trying to beat these things off.
This is me letting you know. I want to catch a cobia.
Come on down.
Does it?
All right, tight lines, Rick.
All right, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Our thanks to Greg Stamper for a great report. He says the cobia are thick in southwest Florida. Let's move up the west coast a little bit to the west central region and check in with none other than Florida Sportsman action spotter Ray Markham. Ray, how are you?
I'm good. Tell Greg Stamper, send some of this cobia up this way, but I just don't think it's going to happen because it's getting daggum cool here.
Well, he says they're having to beat them off with a stick. I'm not sure about that.
I want to see that.
Yeah. I have unintentionally beat some off with the gaff, but never on purpose.
Well, you need to use that pointy end with the one with a little curved dealy on it.
I can't remember. I never get that part right. Tell me how the fishing's been in West Central.
Well, like a lot of places, I think everybody's feeling some of the cool that we've had over the last week. Our water temperature dropped 15 degrees from the start of the cold front last week. Kind of leveled out at anywhere from 62 to 65 degrees towards the middle end of the week. And that at least allowed the fish to start chewing again. We had really fast action with a lot of trout. I think that really pushed those fish into schools. And I mean, we could sit in one spot and catch 50 trout. And as far as the snook were concerned, I figured, I'm not even really going to try target them when I first got out, and the water temperature is about 62, but there's some places I know that they're typically about 5 to 10 degrees warmer than the rest of the areas that I fish. And I went to those, and sure enough, throwing DOA shrimp, it was like one fish after another. It was either snook or trout or flounder. We had real good flounder action in some of the areas and on the flats adjacent to the passes. And all you had to do is just get a jig on the bottom and work it real slow, drag it along, little puffs of mud. That's all it took. But that's pretty much all we really did this week with the cold and the wind and all the other good stuff we had coming on. So hopefully when this wind calms down from this front that's coming in, we'll get back out and do it again.
I believe you will. And I got to tell you, I think all in all, as much as we don't like being cold, I think the cold improves our fishing and makes for a better seasonal change to it. So Ray, you guys have really rebounded from that horrible red tide and all. Do you look for the Florida? Do you look for Fish and Wildlife to open up your harvest a little bit this spring?
Well, I really do. Obviously, snook won't open because if they wait until the time frame that said they were going to open it, it's not going to be open anyway, and won't open until September 1st if they do it. So, that I really do think they could just let it rip right now. I don't have a personal problem with any of those fish in the areas that I fish here in Tampa Bay. I might talk to somebody who might argue with me, but they're those kinds of people that they don't take fish home. They, really don't want anybody to take fish home. And
yeah, I know about that. Yeah.
But, but that's okay. To each his own. I mean, it's like my clients rarely take a limit of fish home. I don't suggest they do it, but it's not against the law. And if they want to do it, that's up to them. But I typically try and kind of steer them a little bit a direction away from it because fresh fish is so much better than stuff that's been sitting in the freezer. So
Ray, and I'm starting to see, and I'm one of them. I'm starting to see recreational anglers get more and more like you. And over here on the East Coast, the limit on gray triggerfish is 10 per person, and we've got a real good harvest right now of gray triggerfish. So the limit on my boat is 5. Because I'm just, first off, I don't want to clean that many, and second off, we got to be smart about this. If we complain about the limits being too tight and the commissioners not knowing what they're doing, we also have to be able to look and say, wait a minute, that limit is too liberal. I'm going to limit my catch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, they try and do these laws for the masses so that we have a sustainable fishery. And definitely there are people who go out and do nothing but catch and release. There are people who go out and they just want to take a fish or 2 fish home for dinner, period. They're not looking to limit out on fish. And then you got the others that are, they're having grandpa, grandma, the aunts, uncles, the cousins, and everybody else over for a fish fry. And they just want to go out and kill everything they can get in the boat. But, you got to kind of reach a happy medium somewhere. And as far as I'm concerned, I think FWC for the most part did a pretty fair job trying to keep up with continuing to make the fishery a sustainable one.
Well, and let me tell you something. The next limit of fish I catch sure won't be my last. I mean, I've got nothing against that, but there's cases where I realize, you know what, guys, that's enough. You know, and I think our colleague George Labonte said it better than anybody. He said, I love him as much as I ever have. I'm just not mad at him anymore. And that's kind of how I feel. If I catch a nice fish now, he doesn't have to die. Now, he might be going home to go on my grill. But every nice fish I catch doesn't have to die anymore. Thank you, Raymond. We appreciate it as always.
Yeah, buddy. We'll catch you later.
We'll talk with you next week. Ray Markham from the West Central area of Florida with a great report. Now we're going to pull up into Big Bend and check with the mayor of Homosassa. Nothing happens in Homosassa unless it goes through William Toney first.
Hey, Rick.
Nothing happens in Homosassa unless it comes through William Toney first.
Absolutely. I'm out. I'm even a cold front, you know.
Man, oh man, oh man. It has gotten chilly, hasn't it?
Man, I tell you what, this has been one of the coldest Decembers that I can remember. Last week at this time, we had a killing frost up here on the Big Bend. And in fact, it was 27 degrees just on the east side of US 19 and down to 33 down here by the river.
Wow, how about that? How about that? I tell you what, I sound funny saying this, William, but I'm kind of glad to see it. I mean, this is a little more what we're used to.
Absolutely. You know, Rick, I was sitting there thinking about it today while I was fishing in the river. Growing up, we had a lot of cold winters. I remember football season in October. You had to have a blanket up there in the stands to watch the teams going. And, you know, we just miss that cold weather. And it's good for, you know, the fishing, the environment, and a lot of things that we need that. Now, I don't necessarily like frosty mornings, but, you know, it pushes a lot of good fish right up into our Nature Coast and Big Bend rivers.
Yeah, I think it clears our water out some too, William. I think it's good for the ecosystem in general. It's always kind of been my feeling about it. If I have to stay home a few more days, I don't like it, but I'll do it. But I'm a fan of getting back to cold winters again. So we'll see what this creates for us. But how's your fishing been this week?
Fishing's been good. You know, it's not. I tell you what, it almost broke the bank. I burnt 2 gallons of fuel today.
Oh.
So, you know, I had to whip the credit card out when I got back to the dock. But now we've been catching nice limits of mangrove snapper in our rivers, especially all your spring-fed rivers here in Citrus County, using live shrimp, fishing anywhere has a rocky point or structure. And they've been some nice fish up to 14 inches, you know, a lot of shorts. But if you sit there and you work through them, you can get a nice limit of some good eating mangrove snapper. Actually caught some nice trout in the river today, throwing some jigs along. What I like to tell people is you got a southern-facing sun hitting on a northern-facing bank with high trees blocking a northeast wind. That's where you're going to find most of your trout and snook. So today we did have a slam. We caught a couple redfish. We did catch some snook and the trout. So it was a good day, and we never left the river at all.
Excellent. Okay. You know, we do our thing where we have solicited our listeners to send in questions for the expert in their area. And we had somebody send one in for your area that likes to vacation in the Big Bend.
Right.
What would the best time of year be for cobia right there around Homosassa?
Traditionally, McRae's of Homosassa always held the cobia big fish tournament, and that was in June. But I've always done better with cobia in May and at the very end of April. June would always be the tail end of it, but May has always been my favorite month where they're pushing through. Never pass a marker, never pass a big boulder, wreck, or anything like that without stopping and looking.
Gotcha. Okay, settle on May and June to catch cobia in the Homosassa area. Thank you so much. That came from John Stevens in Jacksonville. So, John, there's your question. All right.
Awesome, John. Yep.
We appreciate it so much, William. Please tell me we can talk with you next week.
I'll be here, and I'll have my galoshes on.
Hey, have you killed a deer yet?
No, Rick. Don't be a pal. Everybody has been chiming me about the deer. You know what? I'm going to take a break from deer hunting until Christmas.
Can a brother
I've hunted.
Can a brother get some sausage, William? I mean, what's the deal?
I have hunted, and tell you the truth, I'll go revert to this. I've had some very good hunts. I've had tons of does, little button bucks and spikes, tons of hogs, beautiful hunts, and just good time being out there. The right one has not showed up yet.
What a great way to put it. I've never heard it put better. Some of the best hunts I've ever had, William, I came back with the same number of bullets I left with. I mean, I'm very used to that, and I agree with you 100%. Thank you, Cap. We'll talk with you next week.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Have a great week, bud.
Okay, buddy. All right, our thanks to William Toney. Everything's under control in Homosassa because he's in charge. Now we're going to pull up into make the curve there and start heading out west. But first, we got to stop and talk with Kevin Lanier in the Northwest area. Kevin, how are you?
Captain Rick, I'm doing good tonight. A little on the chilly side, but I'm doing good.
How you like this cold weather?
Well, everybody wishes for it and waits for it and can't wait for it to get here. But then when I have to pull out my long johns, I don't care. I'm still cold.
I fished yesterday in my Yamaha foul weather gear and my long johns and jeans and my jacket and my gloves and my face mask from deer camp. It was cold.
Wow.
It was cold. I was 60 miles offshore and it was cold.
I bet. Yes, sir.
So how's fishing over there, bud?
Fishing over here has been pretty good. A lot of inshore stuff going on. Guys are getting sheephead are showing up close in the canals, and we're getting some trout off the beaches and around the inlet. So it's picking up, but it's the time of year for it to start pick up. Seen a couple of redfish, but nothing to stop and come to our area to get right now. But they're going good. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you, but our 2 weekends of red snapper opener went really well. Guys did really well, especially on the second open weekend. Caught a lot of fish, and we were really glad that happened.
I hate to say this, I rag on this all the time, but it makes me so mad. Kevin, now the big thing over here is triggerfish, and it's 10 per person, and guys are crushing them, and I'm guilty. I mean, I catch more triggerfish than I should, but the problem is you've got to make up a catch out of triggerfish and beeliners because everything else is closed. Golly, doesn't it sound to you like if we could open up to one red snapper year round, maybe put a slot in place? I'm not smart enough to tell you that's the right way to go, but we could handle one red snapper year round, and it'd take some of the bottom fishing pressure off our other fish, wouldn't it?
Well, what you're saying is absolutely right, and we've all been preaching to the choir. But once you start to overprotect one, you start to put more pressure on the other. Right. You guys are going to wind up just like us with triggerfish. I mean, we only get the 1-2 per day, and that we had 30 days this year to fish for them. We didn't get to fish for them at all last year. So there's got to be a balancing of the scale in some way. And I think, we as sportsmen need to take the responsibility on that we're going to be good stewards of the resource. At the same time, the feds and the state need to go, okay, let's balance this out so we don't, because we're going to overfish something else because we're underfishing something. You know that as well as I do.
I do, and I know we're underfishing red snapper, Cap. I'm not kidding you. You can't stop inside of 130 feet off of Jacksonville, Florida anymore. You're
right. One of the encouraging things is you wouldn't believe on the last 5 trips that I went on, and I've taken clients on, how many immature red snapper we caught in places that I was not expecting to catch immature red snapper.
Mm-hmm. They've taken over, and it seems like every year class is better than the last year class. We're catching some 18 and 20 pound fish, but oh my gosh, you're right. Everywhere you stop, there's 12-inch fish.
Okay. Everything's been taken 8 to 12-inch fish, and that's in the shallower water, which I haven't seen that before this year. It's really interesting how things move around and how all of a sudden places you didn't have to worry about touching red snapper, now we're getting a bunch of immatures.
Yep. Yep, I know exactly what you mean. Well, I'm glad to hear that your the last couple weekends of your season went well. Is your vermilion bite still going on?
Vermilion bite's still going on, but like I do this time of year, when you get that day that you can get out, you run and do the best you can. Looks like we've got some days coming up, starting on Thursday through the weekend, to be able to get out. We've got some trips scheduled. So should be able to give you a real good report on next week.
Hope so. I look forward to it. Thank you, Cap.
All right, Captain. Good night.
Captain Kevin Lanier with the Northwest section. Well, you can't get out of Florida unless you go out the Panhandle if you're headed west. So let's check in with Tyler Massey and see what's going on.
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you guys doing?
Well, we're cold, Tyler, but we're okay.
Yeah, I heard that.
It feels good. It feels good for a change. I don't want it for long, but as long as it doesn't stay, I'm glad when it gets chilly.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's good working conditions, but not good riding around in boat conditions.
Right. Tell me about fishing.
So it's a little bit of the same, really, for us. Like once we get into these wintertime patterns, it doesn't change up too much. We got this other cold snap, so it's going to stay cold for a few more days. The speckled trout and the inshore stuff are going to move into them canals, move into the mouth of the river, stay in the deeper parts, and just like we talked about last week, it's slow down your presentation when you're fishing for them. Fish slow and fish work the area really good and fish the deeper parts of the canals, the bayous, and up there by the river. So that's been they've been biting pretty good. And again, inshore, the redfish have still been biting good. The slot size fish and the bull reds, they are all biting pretty good, and still catching the bull reds on top. And the slot redfish are around docks and around the bridge pilings and that kind of stuff.
Now, Tyler, when it gets cold like this, do most of the guys soak a dead bait for the reds, or are they throwing paddle tails? How are they catching them when they're?
For the slot reds, fish around the bridges and the structure, a lot of people are using cut bait or using live shrimp. Live shrimp's our go-to for any inshore species. Probably there too. If it's an inshore fish, it's going to eat a shrimp. So that's what a lot of people are just using, taking some live bait, taking some dead bait, and just kind of soaking around the pilings.
I got you. Okay. All right. Has the ocean been closed offshore? Did you get out at all?
I didn't make it out, but the guys that did, they're catching a few groupers still. We got a couple more weeks of grouper fishing. It closed at the end of the year for us for the gag grouper. I know a couple guys caught some of those and a couple scamps, and then also a few vermilion snappers in this last week or so. So it's been pretty decent. The weather hasn't been too cooperative. There was 1 or 2 days in the last week that was fishable offshore, and a few guys got out there.
Gotcha. Outstanding report. I appreciate it. All right. Well, it looks like we got another cold front blowing through, so stay warm, brother. Tyler Massey from the Panhandle, and that wraps up what has been a fun trip around Florida tonight. I guess the big news was cobia. Cobia all the way from the deepwater wrecks from Jacksonville down to Southwest Florida, where I'm just telling you that Greg Stamper said you can't beat them off with a stick. There's so many of them. That is the best news we've had in a while. We heard it from Jim Ross on the East Coast, and we heard it all the way down to Miami. So it looks like we may be in for a good wintertime cobia run. Blackfin tuna slowed down this week. That was kind of a surprise. I expected more out of Jacksonville. Stewart didn't have a whole bunch, but Stewart did have a pretty good sailfish bite this week. That will all be weather dependent. Try and get on that northwest wind on the backside of a front where you're kind of protected by the landmass a little bit. And this is the time of year when you start seeing numbers of sailfish show up. Alan Sherman says they've got a ton of juvenile gag grouper in the inshore waters in Miami. And that is great news because up here in Northeast Florida, we haven't seen a ton of gag grouper anywhere. So fishing's going to go right on through the wintertime. You're just going to have to wear a jacket to do it. And for a lot of us, that's a welcome change. Hey, we hope you enjoyed tonight's podcast. And what we'd like you to do is subscribe to our podcast, tell your buddies about it, and let them subscribe, and maybe we can help them catch more fish too. You got a question? Just Ask Florida Sportsman on Facebook. We'll be glad to direct it to the area of the state that you want answered and get your answer on the air. Hey, the Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. For Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we will see you on the rip and talk with you next week with another Action Spotter podcast. So long.